Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. It is Friday the 9th of June and we are here for the news this morning. We're going to be looking at talks between Sheikh Jassim and the Glazers for the potential takeover of Manchester United. Updates coming out of the last 24 hours on that front. We'll also be having a look at some talks of an exodus at United, more players to be sold. We're looking at slightly more sort of detailed news on pricing, the potential ways that this money is going to be structured and spent this summer. We've got Sam Pilger talking about that. There's also an update on Mason Greenwood as well. Reports coming out last night from the Daily Mail about a potential return of Mason Greenwood in the footballing world. So we will get to all of that. First of all, how are you this morning? Friday, the weekend is nearly here. The weekend is within kissing distance. That's not even a phrase, is it? Within touching distance. Slightly more HR-friendly phrase there. Within sniffing distance of the weekend at the moment. Get your thoughts in the comments. Get your thoughts on these stories in the comments as well. Let's just get straight into it. The Glazers have held talks with Qatar. These are according to, is it Ben Jacobs, I believe? Journalist Ben Jacobs talking directly to, I think it's Give Me Sport, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously the source is Ben Jacobs himself there. Glazers have held in-depth talks with Sheikh Jassim at Old Trafford. The Glazers family have been in direct conversations with a consortium looking to complete a Manchester United takeover. We see here that according to the Daily Mail, Sheikh Jassim's 9-2 Foundation submitted a take it or leave it bid, which apparently expires today. So we will find out today exactly what is going on there, assuming that first of all, Sheikh Jassim said that this was a take it or leave it bid. We're trusting the word of journalists, which typically is a fair enough assumption to make, especially when you look at the reliability of the journalist that said it. But the second point is, even if he did say it, will he stick to it? Because we've heard about final bids, we've heard about last-ditch offers. What was it? The fourth bidding was meant to be a final bid, fourth and final bid, last-ditch offer to try and swoop in and gazump Jim Ratcliffe. We've since seen a fifth bid. So who knows whether all of this is sort of financial and business posturing or whether we will genuinely know today whether Sheikh Jassim has been successful with his final bid. And if he hasn't, does that mean that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has a free run at the new ownership/control of Manchester United? We will find out, hopefully, in the next 24 hours because, personally, I'm getting a bit sick of this now. Whoever's going to own Man United, they need to do it ideally in the next few days because we've got a transfer window, a crucial transfer window as well. And you look at, I mean, we'll get Karen with the story in a second, but every single time that United finish in the top four, a good league position, we then spoil it with a mediocre at best transfer window. I think after Jose finished second, we signed Fred, Dallow and Lee Grant. That is no way to push on and win a league title, is it? After Ole Gunnar Solskjaer finished second, we got Cavani on, what was it, a one-year deal or a loan? I can't remember what it was now. I think we got Amad Diallo, we got Pellistri, Donny van der Beek, we didn't even seem to want. You know, not that, you know, Edinson Cavani is an excellent player, but at 33 years old when he came in, he was certainly past his best. That wasn't a transfer window that pushed United close to Manchester City. It was one instead that ended up, I won't say costing Solskjaer, but certainly one that we really struggled with. That was after he finished third, actually. He then finished second, and, you know, things sort of all hell broke loose the season after. But we need to push on now. Let's carry on with this article. The report suggests that Qatar has made it clear to the Glazer family that no further negotiations will be held after Friday, but the proposal, which is worth no more than £6 billion, will remain on the table. Interesting that. It comes a matter of days after respected journalist Jacobs, there you go, told Give Me Sport that Sheikh Jassim could pull out of the race to complete a takeover if it becomes clear the 9-2 Foundation are unlikely to be selected. Which doesn't really make sense there, does it? Because there's one part of this story is talking about how they won't pull out, but they will leave the offer on the table. The offer, which is worth no more than £6 billion, you see in the middle of the screen, just where my finger is here, will remain on the table, right? So one thing is saying they're not pulling out, the offer will remain on the table. They're not going to negotiate that offer, they're not going to give you any more, but it will remain on the table. Then the second piece is Sheikh Jassim could pull out if a takeover, if it becomes clear that the 9-2 Foundation are unlikely. Those two things don't make sense. You can't leave an offer on the table and pull out at the same time. The messaging does seem to be slightly confused. If we scroll down, Jacobs is aware that Sheikh Jassim and the 9-2 Foundation have been holding discussions with the Glazer family ahead of potentially completing a Manchester United takeover. That bit is obviously crucial. The reliable reporter believes the Qataris or Radcliffe could seal the deal quickly after being named the preferred bidder. He told Give Me Sport there have been what I understand to be in-depth conversations and direct conversations between the Glazers and the 9-2 Foundation as well. All signs point to the fact that the Glazers are actually getting both groups to get deep into the process. If they give the green light on one of them, they'll be in a position, transactionally speaking, to move as fast as possible. I think that's why both groups have been in the dark for so long. Bizarre. But basically, the Glazers are doing everything they can to sort of slow this deal down, to give everyone the opportunity to make one final offer. Here you go, a bit more money. Go on, give us another couple $100 million. And then eventually, once that preferred bidder is announced, or maybe not announced, but certainly contacted, then we'll hopefully be able to see this deal go through very quickly. Hail to the Geek says, question: do you know how Liverpool are able to announce signings before the window opens? They did it in January, and now McAllister Glazers out. I think if you've got permission from the club that you're buying the player from, you can announce pretty much anything you want. The contract can't be signed until the start of the window opens. So McAllister isn't legally a Liverpool player until the 14th of June, is it? When you're allowed to register new players. But for all intents and purposes, the deal is agreed. Things can have been signed, sort of pre-contracts and all of that sort of stuff can be signed. And then as soon as the window opens, the registration of the player becomes legitimate. But yeah, basically, I think, you can announce a deal whenever you want. Look at Chelsea with Nkunku. We've seen it in the past, people announcing deals sort of weeks and months in advance. Who was it? Was it Arda Turan at Barcelona, where they announced him in the summer, but he didn't play until January? So these things can happen. Yeah, let's get into some of the comments. Darren Cox says, I think Jassim's offer is take it or leave it, but he won't continue negotiating on the price. Yeah, but that means obviously he's not pulling out either. He's saying 6 billion, anything after that, that's my offer, and I won't be going any higher. But again, how does that work with this Friday afternoon scenario? Let's say Sheikh Jassim has said, that is my final offer. I'm leaving that on the table. But also, if you don't agree to it on Friday, I'm off. That doesn't. These don't make sense. Not all of these reports can be true. You can't. If you went into a shop and you went, or like a car boot sale or something, where you can barter a little bit, and there's an old box full of Xbox 360 games, and you go, I'll give you a tenner for them. And they go, well, I want 15 quid. There's 12 games there. And you go, right, okay. Well, the car boot sale shuts at 12. I'll be back then. I'm offering you a tenner. And if you haven't accepted it, you're gone at 12, so you have to do it. You go back, it's 12 o'clock, he's gone. Because that's when the car boot sale ends. But you couldn't also have it that he's still there all night with his offer in his hand because the car boot sale's ended. Do you know what I mean? Whereas this, they seem to want him to stay in the car boot sale with his Xbox games as... Man United are looking to sell some players, and Sam Pilger has written about it. There we go. Something about, you know what I mean. Anyway, you can't leave an offer in and also take it at the same time. That's what I'm trying to say. Sam Pilger has said Manchester United confident of a busy summer of sales. Yeah, Luke says you blew it, Joe. Matthew Lambert, and it's gone. It has gone. Around 100 million could be raised by selling Harry Maguire, Dean Henderson, Fred or Scott McTominay, and Anthony Elanga. That is new in Opta Sport. Sam Pilger, friend of the channel, he's been on here before. Reliable journalist, has got good sources at Manchester United. If we can get that article up, Callum, you can see here, it's quite a wordy, quite a long article. But basically, United... could sell 5 players to have around $242 million. Let's see what that is in pounds. In pounds, that would be around £192 million. So you're looking at around 200 million quid to spend this summer if United can sell those players that we mentioned before. Maguire, obviously. It's weird that this whole McTominay or Fred thing, like, it seems to be the case, and Jamie Jackson from The Guardian, who was on the Paddock podcast on Monday, go and check that out if you haven't, he seemed to suggest the same thing, that basically Ten Hag doesn't really like either of them that much, and whoever we can get the most money for, sell that one. Which is an odd position to be in, isn't it? Like, it's almost like, even now, this sort of McFred, moniker of they're basically the same player, but like they're like sort of conjoined twins who wear the same shirt. Sell either of them. Like, they're just in everyone's head, including the manager and the club. They're just the same person, aren't they? One's sort of big and tall, one's sort of short, and he runs around a bit more. But, you know, if you sell one, you sell the other one. Like, it don't even make sense. Who do you want to keep? They're not the same. They're very different in how they play. But United are going, just either of them. This is the same thing, aren't they? I don't know, yeah. Whoever you can get more money for, United are willing to sell. This summer, United are better prepared and could raise in excess of £100 million from player sales, which would in turn provide Ten Hag with a larger budget to bring in the new players he so desperately craves. United actually need to get good at selling people. And even if, you know, the new sort of board that we see, sort of John Murtaugh, if he can... Richard Arnold as well. If they can improve over Woodward, even just by being good at selling players, that would massively help Man United. Obviously, you want them to hand out contracts of suitable length and size. You want them to be able to identify and negotiate purchases of players in a more kind of timely and cost-efficient manner. But even if they just got it so that it becomes commonplace for United to be able to make 30 million quid for a sale of a player who's worth 30 million quid, rather than letting people like Chicharito Hernandez leave the club for, 6 million quid. You know, if we can get 35 million for Maguire, 40 million for Maguire, if we can get 30 million for McTominay, if we can get, you know, another 25 or sort of 25, 30 million for Fred, if it isn't McTominay, then that would be a huge boost to United, because every single summer we have got the worst net spend in football, and then we get told there's no more money for transfers. Well, there would be if we managed our players properly. And one of the reasons why we've struggled to sell players for good money in the past is because people who could have potentially been sold, you look at people like Matic, you look at Paul Pogba, who could have been maybe sold a year earlier and not left to leave on a free, Jesse Lingard, another one. Their wages are so high because of, again, it all goes back, not all of it, but because of the sort of Alexis Sanchez situation where he got 450 grand a week. So now David De Gea, who's been player of the season for 3 years in a row, he needs 375 grand a week. Well, then now Martial needs 250 because he's the one scoring all the goals. Like, all of these trickle-down effects mean that someone like Nemanja Matic is on twice as much as he would be on any club that wants to buy him. The same with Lingard, the same with Pogba, the same with anyone that United have looked to sell in the last few years, are basically unsellable because their wages are so ridiculous that the buying club already has to sort them out financially. So maybe we can get to a point where maybe Maguire's wages aren't ludicrous, maybe McTominay's wages aren't ludicrous, and you can actually sell them for the money they're worth. All of these things trickle down. It's not just, well, why can't we get money for players? We're bad at negotiating. The reason you can't get any money for him is because David De Gea is on 375 grand a week. Whoever buys him has to sort that out, let alone worrying about a transfer fee. Anyway, Jack says, I'm tired of being the second best. Go home, Yanks. I guess he's talking about the Glazers there. Throw in Harper. I've absolutely got that name wrong, and I apologise for that. If it's Fred or Scott, we have to keep Fred. McTominay is about as useful as a torn condom. Interesting. Or a corn condom, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But yeah, that's the thing to me, is he seems to rely on Fred a lot more than he relies on McTominay. So why would we be willing to keep McTominay in the event that Fred is sort of more highly valued by other clubs? Because you don't like McTominay as much. Like, don't hurt your sort of not starting 11, but your kind of 15, 16 man nucleus of a squad for the sake of $5 more million for McTominay. Or for Fred, sorry, because Fred actually gets a lot of games for United. I don't quite understand. Matters says McTominay is always injured. Knights says reports they're trying to give Martinez more money too for no reason. Yeah, but hopefully we're not. You know, I think he deserves a good wage. Martinez, he's been one of our best players this season, but we don't need to jump into, you know, upgrading people's contracts after 12 months. Interesting. Asim Hans says, Joe, in your example, I don't want to go back to the car boot, but we're going to have to. The car boot sale deadline is from the seller and the shop closes, but in this case, one of the prospective buyers is setting the deadline and the shop hasn't closed. Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Okay, so let's start again. So you go to a car boot, there's an Xbox game pile, and they want 15 quid for it. You want 10 quid for it. You say, I will pull my bid of 10 quid at 3 p.m. The car boot never closes. It's a 24-hour car boot. No one's ever seen anything like it. You then go back at 3 p.m. and say, actually, the bid has expired, but I'm also leaving it on the table. That doesn't make sense, does it? There we go. Perfect. Absolutely spotted it. Thank you. Matthew Lambert says, no, Joe. Mason Greenwood, let's go on to that. There's been reports in the Daily Mail last night that Manchester United are considering sending Mason Greenwood out on loan for the whole of next season. The club's internal investigation into the striker, who saw charges of attempted rape, controlling and coercive behaviour and assault discontinued in February, remains ongoing. Which, I mean, just the fact that the internal investigation is taking this long. I understand that, we've only had a sort of a legal or a sort of litigation based conclusion for, February to June. You're looking at 4 months. 4 months is long enough, first of all, to conduct an investigation. And secondly, realistically, we've had 2 years since that audio came out, since those pictures came out. United have had more than enough time to come to a conclusion here. And again, it's just this case of United dawdling and sort of being passive back foot participants in almost every transaction and every decision they have to make. It's the same with transfers. It's the same with the training ground. Everything takes twice as long as it ought to, and everyone is just sort of waiting for someone else to fix it for them. However, Mail Sport understands that officials are looking into a move that would see the 21-year-old head abroad for up to a year. Italy, Spain and Turkey are thought to be the 3 likeliest options. To me, this is a bit of a cop-out. Because basically it does 2 things. It allows United to gauge public response to him being back in the public eye, and therefore decide their decision on that. And it also allows Mason Greenwood to have a season of playing football and to kind of build up his kind of transfer cachet if United are to sell him. Because at the moment, any prospective buyer would say, well, he's not played football in 2 years. Who knows the mental toll of all this, which, in my opinion, good. But, as a footballing sort of financial perspective, a club is going to want to make sure that he's, ready to play football again. But basically, we're just passing the buck another year down the line. Well, we'll make a decision on Mason Greenwood in 12 months. You've already had 2 years. There's already been another 4 months since he came back. I just think it's a little bit bad taste of being like, well, we don't want to sell him. We don't want to make a definitive decision because maybe the public will forgive him and we can play him again. But also, at the same time, we don't want to play him because we know we'll get a sort of slap on the wrist. I think it's slightly cowardly from United, actually. Make a decision and stick to it. But it seems as though a loan deal, which again, financially, which is the only way United act, does make some sense, gives him a chance to prove that he's still a hot prospect in terms of his footballing ability, and sort of gets him out of sight and out of mind for United in terms of PR. Like I said, slightly awkward one for me, and I think it's United not making a decision because they're too scared and they don't want to lose money on someone who, for me, is an absolute disgrace, who I don't want playing for Man United, but it's not my decision. Right, that is going to be all from me. We'll be back this afternoon for the brew. Jay and Steve getting into any potential updates. Hopefully we will have heard from Qatar and the latest on that bid. It apparently expires today, but at the same time there is rumours that it will be left on the table. Hopefully there's more clarity by 4 p.m. today, and if there's any breaking news between now and the 2nd of September when it comes to transfers, we will be live immediately. So hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well, because that way every time we go live you won't miss a single transfer. No one wants to miss a transfer. You turn up at the pub at 6 o'clock, you didn't know we'd signed Francesco Totti. You know what I mean? Who'd want to miss that? So hit the notification bell and you will see it all first. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you in a bit.